Carlton have made it to the final 6. In the lead up to the big game against the D's this weekend, let's reflect on what got us there a little while longer. Finals games have a different heat about them. Pressure is high. Having no liabilities in your 22 is paramount in a sudden death fixture. I love a good under the radar kind of story, as seen in a video I did earlier this year about players of this mould, which leads me to the primary subjects of today's analysis, Blake Acres and Matt Cottrell, two players who aren't the faces of Carlton as a whole, but were the faces of the win on the weekend. The wing position is a fascinating position in footy, and even more so with the versatility we have on our list. Doherty came in for Hollands, so it was expected he was going to go to a wing. If Doc, Cottrell and Acres were on the ground, Doherty would always be on the wing, Matt Cottrell would play off the flank, and Acres would play on the opposite side. Usually, Doherty would take Errol Goulden if he wasn't in the guts, McInerney if he was, whilst Blake Acres would have Braden Campbell to deal with on the other side. Obviously, one of these go to the bench, and Cottrell would roll up accordingly. It's interesting how Cottrell and Acres work alongside one another. Cottrell playing ahead of the wingman as a half forward, sometimes deeper lying, I think placed him in good stead for keeping that separation and playing to what the wingman was doing. Blake Acres said that Cottrell is half the reason he gets off his man and supports the defence. Obviously, that's considering Cottrell rolling back, whilst Acres rotates deeper into the defence. It's that kind of thing that doesn't necessarily get noticed outside of the four walls of Icon Park, yet there are huge amounts of respect for him doing this kind of thing internally. Cottrell responded by saying about Acres, he's been super for us, for the fact he buys into defence so much and he's done it on a number of occasions. These comments probably depict why they're so comfortable with what they're expected to execute. Let's give their sound elimination final performances a look. In sports show style, I'm going to do this in the form of a top 10. 10 unobvious plays, 10 explanations plus a few more because I love hearing myself talk. Let's go. Blake Acres gained 570 metres from his 17 kicks. A lot of those were from him waiting for a dump-off handball or for a chance to intercept so we could get some drive or belt it forward from a standing start. Really smartly done, because while holding that position, he'd follow the ball and be of service when we needed him. And we did benefit from this, especially in the first half, where the separation was created on the scoreboard. It suits his game style because it's not really about being glamorous for him. There were instances where he could help escort the ball further back, so then the push forward by the runners off the flanks were far more effective. Number 2, if we analyse the cohesion between those two positions, half forward and wing, you can see Cottrell knows what he's doing because he's looking at himself in the mirror. Cottrell will work to aid a Doherty and help be that link between the mids and the forwards in open play, not necessarily in clearance where that half forward pushes up to the stoppage. You've got this example where Doherty is looking to extend his run to the boundary, which allows McGovern to redirect the short pass straighter. Given Sydney have read this switch quite well, run and carry is important. Those handball receives can't be cut out unless you track the runner. As it turns out, we advance the ball forward, even for the wider position we've adopted because of Cottrell's workhorse tendencies and no one picking him up. Errol Goulden does this to the same effect later in the game. Number 3. Love this Matt Cottrell example where, knowing he doesn't have a sniff of taking a grab, because that wouldn't be resourceful of him, he discreetly blocks Hayden McLean, who took a dozen marks on the night. Could have been one extra here, and in a 1-goal game, that shit is vital. Number 4. Building on this ability to track back, both Cotters and Acres were disruptive when they did push back, and for that matter around the ground as well. Here's an example of something that happened regularly during the game. When the footy was here, Acres would situate himself a short kick away, meaning there wasn't an opportunity to build from short passes, which is something you want to do when navigating through a zone. It would just be high and long, predictable down the line kicks, unless you got a lead up further afield, which of course is a difficult kick to execute. You try kick over Acres instead, and you try force things a little bit, and the outstretched arms of a 193 centimeter tall wingman are interfering one way or another. Number 5. Another part of a wingman's game is to spread and utilise the space within the confines of the playing field, as we saw through Sam Doherty in example 2. Cottrell leading into this space allows other players to get across and get to even wider parts. The kick by Cottrell is sublime to enable this to occur. Number 6. When Acres talks about players like Cottrell allowing him to be defensive, this is the reason why. If numbers higher up the ground push up, that means players like Acres can roll back. Instead, in this example, the rotation over is too late, the outnumber is present, and Acres, who should be cramming the back 50, is fighting a losing battle. Not how we want Acres to be used for how reliable he was on the last line. Number 7. We've talked about Cottrell being the reinforcement we needed, pushing back from half forward. In this example, Logan McDonald enables the Swans to have a set shot through remaining measured and lowering the eyes after a quick glance left. However, Cottrell rolling back means the Swans are forced to look back into the eye of the storm. Ideally, given the kick went centrally, you'd want to keep it away from congestion, but the Swans are forced to keep it on the side the footy was just delivered from. An alternate scenario where the ball doesn't find a target means that it would be far more ideal for the Blues for all the numbers on that side. Number 8. The good thing about Cottrell being a high half forward is that his aerobic capacity can cover for Doherty and fill the space Doherty leaves should he push down the ground. In this example, Goulden clears from deep in his own half, and Doherty can apply that pressure in this position. Because the workhorse of Cottrell can play his natural position momentarily, fill the space Doherty usually would be closer to, and win a ground ball to halt a play that could have had very different consequences for the 3-on-2 as pictured. Number 9. We've talked about Cottrell being able to push higher up the ground, but what about tracking back as the ball goes forward? The decision to play Cottrell high half forward meant if the ball goes deep over the back like this example, you're holding Blakey accountable. He'll think twice if he wants to push higher up the ground because of Cottrell's unique ability to possess both rapid pace and strong aerobic capacity. And the more Blakey can't push forward to be more damaging and effective, the better. This works twofold. That pace for Cottrell can also be effective in negating the Blakey influence when he does have it. Obviously like for like in terms of pace, those two. Number 10. For Cottrell's second, a lot of people were pointing out how Acres' gut running all the way to the goal square created this goal. But in my eyes, part of it is because of where Cottrell ran. Cottrell starts goal side on Warner, and the minute Harry dishes it off, Cottrell is darting towards a deeper part of the 50. It's a part of this mentality to lock the ball in and do a good job of it. It's not necessarily about taking the mark. You'd usually like to have a little lead up with all this space, but that would go against our system, and that also means you have to wait for numbers to get back. As we can see by the still, that would not benefit us. It's that Cottrell run, well supplied by a high Charlie kick, which gets us in a position suitable to score from as we bring it to ground and go to work. Number 10A. These are some superb Sam Doherty and Matt Cottrell efforts. We talked about Acres preventing the short kick, and in the wet, sometimes the weight of the ball can change the outcome of the kick and you have to alter things on the fly. Obviously harder to generate lift. The initial Doherty tackle, and we talked about Cottrell covering for Doherty and filling those spaces Doc would usually occupy. His pace allows this close down to happen faster and the play to falter in a shallower spot for Sydney, a better spot for us to start our attack from. Number 10B, that bone-tingling sensation we all got when Ches kicked that ripper of a goal. Well, it doesn't happen had Cottrell not done this shoulder glance and moved in front of McInerney. Obviously now preventing the pass to the Swan and placing himself in position means we get possession, and he also gets a bit of luck with the call. And via a bit of fortune, we are living in paradise. Number 10C. This tackle, man. Jesus Christ. This tackle hits different. Number 10D. My God, was Acres cooked. His shoulder busted, but this work rate is absolutely unbelievable for this stage of the game. Look, I could mention some of the bad. As I mentioned, Errol Goulden felt a bit too liberated in the second half for my liking, especially in the fourth, but I would rather dwell on the good instead of the bad, especially given we won our first final in 10 or so years. That reaction by Acres following his tackle summed up how we were all feeling. Painful. There were times where this game felt painful to watch. Painfully agonizing as the game tightened up. But the only thing that really matters in the present day is whether we won or not. We're still here. We go again. Thanks for tuning in. We will be back for the analysis next week, reviewing our semi-final performance. Will there be a next week for Carlton? Who knows? That's just the magic of finals. Thanks again, and bye for now.